The Sports Town Podcast.
Hey guys, it's JJ Readers. Thanks so much for listening to the Sports Town Podcast. We can't thank you enough. If you're listening on the audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, don't forget to rate the podcast. It would be greatly appreciated. And also, if you're watching on YouTube or listening, which you probably are, that's where most of my listeners come from, don't forget to subscribe. Feel free to comment, like any of the videos that you have not, and don't forget to hit the bell for notifications so you'll be updated when we release new videos. And before we start today's episode, I'd like to tell you about the new giveaway we are doing. The winner gets a Giannis City jersey since he won the Finals MVP. Now, if the Suns would have won, I probably would have given either a Devin Booker or a Chris Paul City jersey, but since the Bucks win, I'm going to give a Giannis City jersey. So basically, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is follow us on Instagram at sports_podcast and like any of the posts and screenshot for proof. Then you can have up to 3 entries. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and screenshot for proof. Now, everything you'll screenshot for proof because, of course, it'd be much easier for me to do it for. And then, of course, tag at least 3 friends, like any of the videos on our YouTube channel, and screenshot that for proof as well. And then, of course, the contest ends at 1 a.m. Eastern. I will release the winner very soon after that, probably a few days afterwards, just so I can, gather up all the winners. So, again, don't forget to check that out. And also, before we start, speaking of the Bucks, we recently had Andrew Jones on the pod. He's been on here twice. He's the co-host of the Pickle Podcast, avid Bucks fan and a comedian. He actually predicted the Bucks, and I think he said they would win in 6 games. So again, congratulations to Andrew Jones. Don't forget to follow him on Instagram and Facebook. On today's Sports Town Podcast, we have 2 great interviews. First, we talked to Connor Smith of the Fairway Heaters Talking Golf podcast. We talked about the Open Championship. I know it's a little late and the Olympics just happened, but I wanted to talk about that. And of course, it took me a while to edit. Unfortunately, I'm kind of slow right now just because of everything is going on right now. I'm really busy in life right now. So again, that's my fault. But again, don't forget to check out the Fairway Heaters the Fairway Heaters Talking Golf podcast. You can check them out at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much wherever you listen to podcasts. And then of course, you can follow them on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Fairway Heaters. And then of course, we have a great interview with the Basketball Fiends podcast with Jesus and Alex. Those were great interviews. We talked about our reaction to the NBA Finals, the NBA Draft, what the offseason will look like this year in the NBA. It's already heating up on the first day at the time of this recording. And of course, what will the Rockets do with John Wall? All that good stuff. You can check out the Basketball Fiends podcast pretty much wherever you get your podcasts, except they don't have a YouTube or they don't have a YouTube channel yet, but they are close to making that. So when they do have a YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe and check out that podcast. And you can also check them out on Instagram and Twitter at, I think it's Basketball Friends or Basketball Fiends, I believe. It might be BB Ball, something like that, but I think it's Basketball Fiends. And then, of course, as usual, we have the Sports Lightning Round, questions from Instagram, highlight of the week, our poll question, and much more. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at sports_podcast and on Twitter at SportsTownPod. All right, let's get the episode underway. Alrighty, it's time for our weekly poll question. This week's question, and again, don't forget to you can check out the poll question every week on Instagram at Facebook at sports_podcast or on Twitter at SportsTownPod. Now, the 2 questions today, or for this episode, was, will this be Aaron Rodgers' last season in Green Bay? Overwhelmingly, you guys said yes, which 87% of you guys said this will be Aaron Rodgers' final season with the Packers. I think he's going to play a few more years, but I think this is going to be his last year with the Packers. And again, thanks for voting on that question. And the next question is, with Cade Cunningham being the number 1 overall pick, do you think he'll win the Rookie of the Year next season? 63% of you said no, which is a little shocking. I think he should be the favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. I believe he is, but you guys said no. I'm going to disagree with you guys, but at the same time, I could see guys like Jalen Suggs or Jalen Green winning it. There's a lot of good guys that could win this year, but I really think it's going to be Cade Cunningham's to lose. And again, thanks for voting. You can vote every week on Instagram at Facebook at SportsTown_podcast or on Twitter at SportsTownPod.
This is the highlight of the week.
and the Angels grab the lead.
Boy, and the fans are going nuts here. That's why they came to the ballpark, to see something special, and Shohei did it again. 3-run home run number 37, 81 RBIs for Showtime. Show me the money. 3-run home run. Just like that, the halos are up with Shohei. Power swing.
What a home run by Shohei Ohtani. Again, I keep on messing that name up. I got to get better at the name since he's most likely going to win the league MVP, and we're going to be talking about him for years to come. Again, at the time, he had 37 homers. He still currently is at 37, but he leads the league in homers, both in the AL and the league altogether. Again, unfortunately, Mike Trout is still not yet back, and I don't know if the Angels are going to make the playoffs this season. It doesn't look like it, but he's still very fun to watch, and I can't believe how good he is as a pitcher and a hitter, but very exciting to watch and most likely going to win the league MVP. And now on to our interview with Connor Smith of the Fairway Heaters Talking Golf podcast. All righty, I am pleased to be joined by Connor Smith of the Fairway Heaters Talking Golf podcast. How's it going, Connor?
Doing well, man. Happy to be back on and, talk some golf with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Of course, as we all know, the Open Championship happened on Sunday, or just got done on Sunday. Of course, as we're recording, this is on Wednesday afternoon. Of course, Collin Morikawa wins his second major, and he's only 24 years old. And the crazy part about it is the only other golfer to win two majors before they turned 25 was Tiger Woods, which is crazy. But what did you think about Morikawa's performance at the Open Championship?
I'm not really surprised, honestly. Collin's a great ball striker, and to win out there, you have to be able to put the ball, in certain positions to score well. And the whole field got pretty lucky. It wasn't a traditional Open. There wasn't a lot of weather. There wasn't a lot of outside factors that kind of made the course harder. It was perfect conditions, and Collin is one of the best ball strikers on tour. And, it helps to hit the ball so well and shoot it like that. And he's been grinding on his putting, and that, showed to be also, he's making great putts out there too. All around, just great performance. The kid has an unreal future ahead of him.
Yeah, what I forgot to mention is I think they said during the broadcast or something like that after the tournament was over, something like that he was the first golfer to ever win two majors without even playing in them before, which is incredible. Do you think Collin Morikawa could be the next Tiger Woods? Because he's really young and he's already got two major championships.
No, there's not. I don't think there's ever going to be another Tiger Woods. He's in an element, a league, status of his own. And especially nowadays, it's everyone's so good out there and everyone's so focused, and it's hard to do what Tiger did. I mean, I don't know. I don't think there will be someone who compares to him, but Morikawa is going to be a generational type player. You saw it with Spieth a little bit. He won early in his career, and there was a lot of expectations like he was going to be the next Tiger Woods. And he's starting to figure it out now, but he had a couple of years there where he was just irrelevant. And do I think Collin Morikawa will do that? No. But to answer your question, no, I don't think he's going to be another Tiger Woods, but he will be a generational talent of, years to come.
Yeah, and what I took away from the last few years, because I think what Jordan Spieth, you said, won, three majors in 3 years, and he was supposed to be the next guy, but it seemed like he, as you pointed out, he kind of hit a wall. And I feel like we haven't had a Tiger Woods. We haven't had anybody like Tiger Woods, and we haven't really had someone who's dominated the golf world. And I think we keep on looking for that, and we keep on saying after someone wins a few majors or wins a few tournaments, we say, oh, he's the next Tiger Woods. But it seems like after a while they kind of cool off, and we don't really hear about him much anymore. But yeah, I do think Morikawa is impressive, and I think you're right. There probably won't ever be a Tiger Woods, but I feel like Morikawa could be next guy. But again, he could be like a Spieth as well and just completely fall off. And again, thankfully Spieth is coming back, and he's played really well. Of course, he won a tournament this year for the first time in 3 years. So it's incredible to see, that work. And of course, as we keep on talking, he's really young. And also that happened at the Open Championship. Of course, Bryson DeChambeau acting a little childish during his whole, not having the right golf club and stuff like that. And I think they were saying too that he's the only one that has the swing like how he swings. Like his swing is completely different than everybody else's. But what did you think about that? And did you think he was acting childish?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty embarrassing statement from him. We talked about it on our episode yesterday. You have a team around you at Cobra who, it's basically him and Ricky Fowler. I mean, those are really the only Cobra guys that are relevant in the golf world. So, if he goes to any other, equipment company, it's going to be hard for them to put as much time and effort as Cobra does for him. And I think it's really disrespectful. I think it's childish. I think it's I don't know if you follow his. He has like a YouTube page now, and they show how much work, how much dedication, how much time these people are putting in to perfect his golf clubs to his exact specification. And I don't know, it's just pretty disrespectful at the end of the day. And JT said it best: when you're swinging out of your shoes 135 miles per hour, it's hard to hit the center of the puck face. So maybe he needs to think of a new approach to the game instead of blaming the staff at Cobra.
Yeah, and I'm a little shocked. I'm a little shocked that Cobra hasn't, I know Cobra said something after it all happened and they were disappointed with his comments, but I'm surprised that Cobra didn't go out and just drop him to be the way he acted. But I mean, it seems like too, DeChambeau is never happy, and he's always he's never happy, and he's always got to have something different. It's just DeChambeau, as we all know, is one of a kind golfer, but I just feel like he's never happy, and everything has to be his way, and if not, it's not going to go well. So again, as you mentioned, did you want to add anything to that? Or
yeah, I agree. I mean, I was just going to say, it clearly is hard to work with him. I mean, his caddy quit a day before the tournament, you know what I mean? And you have people that are putting their life into making sure you perform at the best. It's disappointing, especially when you have such a different approach to the game, like from putting to driving to everything. And your approach is unique. It's different. And, he's trying to change the game with, putting on a bunch of weight to swing the golf club and all that stuff. And, it's hard to hit the ball perfect every time. I mean, especially at their level too, no different. But again, for him to name the equipment company is honestly just ludicrous, to be honest. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like it's going to be interesting to see what DeChambeau does going forward. And we're all done with majors this year, and we'll see what happens in the next Masters and see if anything really changes. But it's just going to be very entertaining to see what happens to DeChambeau, if he changes anything. And well, we'll definitely see what happens in the next few months. I kind of wanted to point this out, but another golfer that has played pretty well, but just seems like he can't quite get there, is Louis Oosthuizen. I think he won the Open back in 2010, but it seems like this year he's been in contention, and even last year too, he's been in contention with a lot of those tournaments, but he just can't quite finish them. Do you think Oosthuizen will get another major, and why do you think he keeps on being so short and just can't quite get that second major?
I don't think Louis is going to win another major. He's been close so many times, especially this year. He's been so close. I think he has now 7 runner-up finishes in majors, if I'm correct. But I think the thing with him that I've noticed is he's a great Thursday, Friday, Saturday player. Then come Sunday, it just seems to be the case where he just falls off every time. And, it's it's kind of sad to watch because he's like so close so many times, couple different bounces one way or the other. And, we could be sitting here talking about how he's, he's won 2 majors this year. So, that's golf though. It's crazy and a lot of tough breaks. It's hard, but he puts himself there. He just can't do it. And I don't know what it is, but I hope, one day he does. I hope he proves me wrong.
Yeah, and it just, I mean, I didn't really honestly know a whole lot about him until the last few years. I think in the US Open in 2020, he was close and then he kind of fizzled there. And then I think it's been now 2 majors he's been in contention, but it just seems like he can't quite get the finish. He's kind of like similar to Tony Finau. Finau hasn't won in a while, but Finau is always that guy that's always in contention, but just can't quite get the finish. Of course, Finau is a lot younger than Oosthuizen and hasn't yet won a major, but it's sad to see. The World Golf Rankings were released, and as you mentioned before we started recording, Jon Rahm is now number 1. Colin Morikawa moves up to 3. Is there anybody in the top 5 or top 10 that you're kind of surprised with? And do you think there should be? And who do you think the top 5 golfers currently are?
Well, I got the list right here. I mean, obviously, you said top 10, right? That I'm shocked with.
Top 5 or top 10, kind of what? Just
yeah. I mean, the top 5, like 1 through 8, is pretty. I mean, you make a case for all those guys to be there, but you look at a guy like Oosthuizen. Obviously, has been playing unreal golf, but I don't think necessarily he's a top 10 player in the world. I wouldn't pick him over a lot of these guys on the list. Harris English is 10th in the world right now. I mean, that's crazy to see. He's playing some good golf, but it's just like you go from 10 to 20, you have all these guys, Finau, Berger, Rory, Jordan Spieth, Patrick Reed. I'm not betting against them, but right now I think my top 5 golfers are Rahm. He's got top 10 finish in every major this year. 1-1. His game's unreal right now. I mean, DJ, these are in no particular order, but DJ is playing. He's always been playing. He's so consistent, man. Like his game is like so fun to watch. It's so simple. It's so easy. Just, ball on the green, ball in the hole. I think a guy, that a lot of people like, he's 5th right now in the World Golf Rankings, but Xander, I mean, Xander's a really good player. I think he's for sure belongs to be in that top 5. But yeah, I think that, I guess if I had to rank them, my top 5 right now would be Rahm number 1, Colin Morikawa number 2, JT 3, DJ 4, and then I hate to say it, but I think Bryson's one of the top 5 golfers in the world right now, in my opinion. And I don't like him, but I think he's there.
Speaking of DJ, he's kind of hit a rough patch a little bit, of course, after he won the Masters and after he won the FedEx Cup last year. He's kind of hit a rough patch. It's not really a concern, but do you think there's something why do you think he's just not quite? I know every golfer cools off, but it just seemed like he was really cooled off and he hasn't really done a lot this year. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know. Golf, you have to understand, like, golf's a long season. I feel like the PGA Tour is always on at some point. Those guys are grinding all year to stay in form. So I think right now he's probably gonna. He did finish top 10 in a major, like I said, but after the Olympics, I think it's all about peaking at the right time. And these big guys, they have right now, think about it, a lot of wins, a lot of money. So I think their biggest focus is peaking right at the right time at around major time. So see these guys, I'm sure when, if you talk to come April, Dustin Johnson's game will be at, tip top shape.
As you just kind of mentioned the Olympics, and it's actually going to be very close from now because the Olympics start on Friday technically. But Morikawa, I know, is participating in the Olympics this year, and I think Justin Rose won the last time they had golf in the Olympics. But who do you like, or who do you think is the top golfers right now that could win, or who do you predict to be in the top 3 or top 5 for this year's Olympics for the golf?
I think it's a unique situation because you look at the two, Siwoo Kim and Sung Jae Im, the two South Korean golfers. They're playing for something more. They're playing for 2 years of military service exemption, if they medal, right? So those guys are going to be right at the top. Hideki Matsuyama, he's playing in Japan. That must be really cool for him. He's coming off a Masters win. John Rahm, he's playing great golf right now. And then I think, for the United States, my favorite is Justin Thomas, just because, we talked about it yesterday on my podcast. It was, he has that great relationship with Tiger Woods, and, what's something Tiger Woods doesn't have. That's an Olympic medal. So I think the motivation for JT is right there. Not only because he loves playing for the red, white, and blue, loves America, loves playing for our country, seen it in Ryder Cups, seen it in President's Cups, but that extra little motivation of his good buddy Tiger Woods doesn't have a medal, so he's going to try to get one.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be interesting. And I think there's a lot of people that don't really think that golf is in the Olympics, and I always forget that golf is actually in the Olympics. But it's going to be interesting to see. Of course, Morikawa participating, as you said. You have a few guys that you think are going to win. I'm definitely excited for it. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think this is the second time they had golf in the Olympics. Because I think,
they might have had it in the early 19 like that era, but yeah, this is the second time they've had it in a thing forever. I think this. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure if they've had it before, but this is definitely the second year that since I've been on live that it's been here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. And again, thanks for coming on, Connor. It's been great, especially recapping the Open Championship. But there's a few things else I want to mention before we talk about your podcast. And there's another guy I think that I mentioned earlier, Tony Finau, but. When do you think he'll be able to win a major? And do you think, the next major is until the Masters, but when do you think Tony Finau will finally be able to capture his first major? Because I think he's going to win a major in his career sometime. When do you think would be the most realistic time for him to win?
It's hard because he can win any major at any time, right? Right. He has all the tools in the bag. He has all the skill. It's really just that mental break of getting over that hump. And I've always believed that once he gets over the hump of winning one, he's going to win multiple. But he's been close at Augusta. For some reason, I think his first major is going to come at the Open, because I feel like once he learns how to kind of play links golf to perfection, it will be very good for him. But I think in the next 2 years, we're going to see Tony Finau win a major. 2 years. I have a good feeling about it. He's been too close for too long.
Yeah, I'm really hoping Tony Finau can win, because he's one of my favorite golfers, and just it was unreal how many times or how close he has been, and it just seems like he can't quite get over it, but I think eventually he will, and I would love to see him win earlier than 2 years, but that makes a lot of sense, especially with Finau. Again, I think he's going to be. I think I agree with you saying that I think he'll win multiple after he wins that first. It's just the first one is going to be the hardest.
Right.
But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Finau finally getting over the hump and finally getting that first major. And before we end the interview, if you want to talk more about your podcast, I know you've been on here a few times, but if you want to talk about your podcast, where we can get it, talk about your most recent episode, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So, we're on pretty much all major platforms right now. We just started doing our YouTube episodes. So we have our most recent episode up there on YouTube, and then I'll put today's episode on there as well. We just dropped an interview with Mallory Pugh. She plays for the Chicago Red Stars in the Women's Soccer League of the United States, and she's also a part of the U.S. national team, which is pretty cool. She came on, we talked some soccer. Awesome interview with her. She's incredible. And then, TikTok is at Fairway Heaters Golf. Social media pages are at Fairway Heaters. I thank you for having me on again. I love talking golf, and it's been a pleasure. Maybe if we do a basketball segment or something, we can have you on.
All right, thanks again. I would definitely be down. Especially with the NBA Finals just ending. So, again, thanks for coming on. Again, you can get the Fairway Heaters Talking Golf podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And you just mentioned YouTube. You can also get them on Instagram and TikTok, right?
Yeah, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter.
Okay. And then, that's the Fairway Heaters Talking Golf podcast. All right, thanks for coming on, Connor, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks, buddy.
The STP Sports Lightning Round. Your biggest sports stories in the world this past week.
Sad news for Colts fans. Recently acquired quarterback Carson Wentz is out with a foot injury. It was first reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter that the Colts quarterback had injured his foot in practice and will need to undergo further testing on his foot. He will be out 5 to 12 weeks, first reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter. Wentz was traded this offseason from the Eagles after a tough season in Philly. The former number 2 overall pick in the 2016 NFL Draft was sacked 50 times last season and threw 15 interceptions in just 12 starts. The Colts traded a third-round pick in 2023 and a second-round pick in 2022 for Wentz. According to offensive coordinator Marcus Brady, Wentz told him that he felt a twig in his foot when he rolled out and planted to throw late in practice. He also stated he's with the docs trying to figure out what the process is. Still evaluating what the next move is, how bad it is. Then we'll go from there. To make news even more worse for the Colts, center Ryan Kelly is also out with an injury. Indy is also dealing with another defensive player, Darius Leonard, former Defensive Rookie of the Year. Leonard is dealing with an injury to his ankle, and there were a few other Colts players that are not available because of COVID protocols. According to multiple sources, the Colts franchise is dealing with a plethora of COVID-related issues. With the injury to Carson Wentz, the Colts will have to turn to second-year quarterback Jacob Eason. Eason was drafted in the 4th round of the 2020 NFL Draft out of Washington, and Indianapolis also has rookie quarterback Sam Ehlinger out of Texas. The Colts traded for Carson Wentz earlier this offseason to reunite with his former offensive coordinator Frank Reich. Reich is currently the coach of the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts have also signed veteran journeyman Brent Hundley. However, all these injuries will complicate things for the 2-time Super Bowl champions. The Chicago Bulls have traded for Pelicans guard Lonzo Ball that sent Thomas Satoransky, Garrett Temple, and a second-round pick for the former number 2 overall pick in the 2017 NBA Draft. Ball is signing a 4-year, $85 million deal with the Bulls. The news was first reported by Sham Sharoni of The Athletic and Stadium. Last season in New Orleans, Ball averaged 14.6 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, and 4.2 assists per game. Ball was somewhat of a disappointment in LA after being drafted with a number 2 overall pick. The Lakers traded the former UCLA product to the Pelicans in 2019 in exchange for superstar Anthony Davis. That's when Ball improved his game tremendously. Without the pressure of being in LA, Alonzo flourished as a second option to Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. His game improved dramatically, and there were reports before he signed with Chicago that the Pelicans wanted to retain him. Superstars Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson wanted to keep Lonzo in New Orleans, but that just wasn't meant to be. Chicago last trade deadline acquired Orlando Magic All-Star center Nikola Vucevic and already have superstar Zach LaVine. LaVine is a 2-time dunk contest champion. The Bulls will most likely try to make a push this upcoming season. The Bulls have missed the playoffs the last 4 straight seasons and will look to make their first playoffs since 2017 and maybe threaten the Bulls and Nets for the best record in the Eastern Conference. Chris Paul is returning to the Valley. Paul has signed a 4-year contract worth $120 million. The former Wake Forest product declined his $44.2 million option and became a free agent. The news was first reported by Adrian Wojnarowski, who got the news from Paul's agent Steve Human and Ty Sullivan. Paul helped the Suns reach the NBA Finals for the first time since 1993. Last season, the Suns finished 51-21 and helped the second-best record in the league and the Western Conference. Chris Paul was traded from OKC to Phoenix in the 2020 offseason, and the Suns were projected not to go as far as they went. Despite losing to the Bucks in the NBA Finals, many people saw the Suns as an emerging team and credited their success to the 36-year-old veteran. Chris Paul does have his bird rights, which means that he is eligible for his 4-year deal without triggering the 38-year-old plus NBA rule. Paul told Yahoo Sports, "I love to play. It's a real privilege. I love the grind. I love the workouts. This game means a lot to me, and I'm so thankful to be in this position." The 11-time All-Star averaged 2.8 points per game, 8.2 assists per game, and shot 54% from the floor. Chris Paul during the season dealt with a few injuries and also missed some time after testing positive for COVID-19. Despite all of this, Phoenix still reached the NBA Finals and took Milwaukee to 6 games. The Suns reached the Finals by beating the Clippers in 6 games to reach the NBA Finals. With the signing of Chris Paul, the Suns have another great chance of making the NBA Finals. Currently, the Suns' betting odds of making the championship are currently 1,500 to 1. The Miami Heat have acquired former Raptors point guard Kyle Lowry. The Miami Heat and Toronto Raptors have agreed to do a sign-and-trade deal. The Miami Heat will receive Kyle Lowry, and the Toronto Raptors will acquire Goran Dragic, Precious Achiuwa. Lowry is considered one of the greatest Raptors of all time. Lowry announced that he was going to be a Miami Heat on Instagram. Toronto is turning the page on the roster that helped them reach 7 consecutive playoffs and an NBA championship in 2019. Lowry's new deal with Miami is worth $90 million over the next 3 seasons. The Heat star Jimmy Butler wanted to team up with Lowry, and there were reports that it would happen during the trade deadline. However, that did not happen. Raptors president Masai Ujiri stated he was not comfortable trading Lowry during the trade deadline. Last season, the Raptors missed the playoffs for the first time since 2013. The Raptors were not able to play in Toronto because of the strict COVID protocols in Canada that did not allow travel outside of the country. Toronto had the 4th overall pick last week and selected Scotty Burns out of Florida State. The Raptors did a similar thing in 2018 when trading away franchise icon and fan favorite DeMar DeRozan to the Spurs for Kawhi Leonard. The Raptors would end up winning the championship the next season, and after they won, Kawhi Leonard would go to LA. The Raptors did sell a lot, but they ended up winning the title, which was their ultimate goal. The Baltimore Ravens have signed veteran pass rusher Justin Houston for a 1-year deal worth $4 million. Houston has played the last 2 seasons in Indy, and before that was in KC. The veteran pass rusher and Raven had been linked to each other for 3 months, but the two could not come to a deal until Saturday. The news was first reported by ESPN's Adam Schefter. According to multiple sources, Houston turned down multiple offers from other teams to play in the Charm City. They also reported that the two sides met on Friday night to discuss a contract, and they got it done the next day. The former Chief and Colt wanted to play with the Ravens because he believes it gave him the best chance to win his first Super Bowl ring. The former Georgia product had been in the league for 10 years and was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs in the 3rd round back in 2011. He is a 4-time Pro Bowler and a former All-Pro. His last Pro Bowl came in 2015. The Ravens desperately needed a pass rusher after losing Matt Judon and Yannick Ngakoue in free agency this year. In his career, he has a total of 97.5 sacks. He now joins many veterans on the Ravens defense. Baltimore has many veteran pass rushers that include Calais Campbell, Derek Wolfe, and others. The Ravens have one of the best defenses in the league, and it only got better with the addition of Justin Houston. Kawhi Leonard is declining his player option to become an unrestricted free agent. The 2-time Finals MVP is now a free agent and can sign with any team that he so chooses. However, multiple sources are reporting that the Claw will most likely stay in LA. Although he is listing to other teams currently. Last season, Leonard had to say about the offseason. Obviously, if I'm healthy, the best decision is to decline the player option. But that doesn't mean I'm leaving or staying. There are multiple rumors that say he will sign a 1-year deal with the Clippers and be a free agent again next season. If he does that, Leonard will be eligible for a 5-year, $250 million Supermax extension. The 5-time All-Star signed with the Clippers in 2019 after winning the championship with the Toronto Raptors. He convinced Paul George to demand the Thunder to trade him to the Clippers. The Clippers traded multiple first-round picks that included Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and others to the Thunder in exchange for George. Before last season started, the Clippers re-signed Paul George to a massive 4-year deal. Despite the Clippers not making the NBA Finals, the Clippers still managed to make the Western Conference Finals for the first time in franchise history. They were defeated by the Phoenix Suns in 6 games. Leonard injured his ACL in Game 4 of the Western Conference semifinals versus the Utah Jazz. He did not play a single game after that. Team President Lawrence Frank had this to say about Leonard's injury. We hope to have a very long-term relationship with him. Right now, our focus, like Kawhi, is on his health. He had major surgery. That's going to require a great deal of time, and we want to support him in that. The Clippers were still able to knock down the Jazz in Game 5 and 6 and reach their first ever Western Conference Final. According to multiple reports, the Knicks and Mavericks are planning to go hard at convincing Kawhi Leonard to sign with them this offseason. The Heat are also reportedly looking to sign Leonard this offseason. However, after they traded for Kyle Lowry, sources are now saying Miami is no longer interested in the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. It will be quite interesting to see what Leonard does this offseason. But despite all the rumors of Leonard leaving the Clippers, my money is on Kawhi returning to the Clippers and helping them win their first ever championship. Also in Clipper news, Serge Ibaka has opted in his contract and will be with the Los Angeles Clippers this upcoming season. Serge Ibaka signed a 2-year deal with the Clippers last offseason. LA also hopes to bring back free agents such as Nicholas Batum and Reggie Jackson. The Miami Heat are extending Heat forward Jimmy Butler to a 4-year, $184 million extension. The deal will become official on August 6th when the NBA season officially begins. The news was first reported by Sham Sharoni of The Athletic and stated, Jimmy Butler helped lead the Miami Heat to their first NBA Finals in over 7 years last season in the bubble. The Heat eventually lost to the Lakers in 6 games. Butler played extremely well in the bubble. However, this next season the Heat struggled and ended up losing to the Bucks in the first round of the playoffs. They were swept by the eventual NBA champions, the Milwaukee Bucks. Since joining the Heat, Jimmy Butler has averaged 21.5 points per game, 7.1 assists per game, and 6.9 rebounds per game. Jimmy Butler was instrumental in recruiting Kyle Lowry to the Heat. The Heat are projected to make the playoffs next season, with the addition of Kyle Lowry, the Heat could give the Nets and Bucks a run for their money. And now, on to our interview with the Basketball Fiends podcast. Alrighty, I am pleased to be joined by Jesus Acevador. Oh, shoot, I messed that name up. And then Alex Agarella of the Basketball is Friend podcast. How's it going, guys? And sorry for butchering your names. That's my bad.
No problem. And you want to butcher our podcast name. It's the Basketball Fiends. Fiends, like junkies.
Okay, that's my bad. Again, that's all me, unfortunately. So yeah, go check your guys' podcast, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. How's it going, guys?
It's going good. Can't complain. Just can't complain. Let's just say that.
Yeah, just chilling.
Yeah, now the NBA season is over, but we had a great finals between the Bucks and Suns. But before we start that, if you want to tell more about your podcast, how you do it, I was listening to it a little last night. But if you want to tell us more about your podcast, where we can get it, all that good stuff.
Yeah, the Basketball Fiends is a weekly half-hour podcast. We try to do about 4 topics in half an hour. We're a member of the R. Esquina Podcast Network, and R. Esquina is a website dedicated. It's we call it the corner of the sports and culture world that amplifies Latino, Latina, Latinx, whatever word you want to use, their voices and their stories. And Alex and I have been doing this podcast since mid-January, I think, Alex, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I want to say around mid-January we started.
And the funny part is Alex and I didn't know each other. We weren't aware of each other. We just hooked up through our Esquina, and they were like, Alex was putting a basketball podcast together through our Esquina. And at that time, I was actually going to do a soccer podcast because that's like my second love is soccer. And I was like, well, man, if you want to co-host, let me jump on. And from there, we've just been doing it every week, 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've checked out a lot of podcasts, and I saw you guys out on Instagram, and I was very interested, and it looked pretty looked like a great podcast. But before we start talking about the NBA Finals, you mentioned you're a Houston Rockets fan, Jesus, and of course they have the number 2 pick in the draft. And according to Shams Sharonia, which I didn't know this before we started recording, but the Rockets are trying to move up because they really want Cade Cunningham. What do you guys think of that? And another question is, John Wall, is he a part of the Rockets' future?
I saw that tweet by Shams, and those have been the rumblings for the past couple of weeks that the Houston Rockets want to jump up to the number 1 spot. They do have a lot of picks. They have the second pick. They have the 23rd pick, the 24th pick. So, and of course they have future picks from the James Harden trade. So they definitely want to go there because I think Cade Cunningham is the consensus number 1. I don't think there'll be no surprise there. I think both of you guys will agree with me. If they can get it, I think that quickly raises the Houston Rockets from a non-playoff team to maybe a contender to be in the play next year. But it definitely sets them up for a good future. As far as John Wall, my prediction is I don't think he'll be with the Houston Rockets starting the season. I think there's a lot of teams that could use a veteran point guard of his caliber. Now, it could maybe wait till end the season where they trade him, but I believe that the Houston Rockets are trying to move John Wall. But right now, that's not their focus right now.
What about you, Alex? What do you think?
I'm kind of on the same boat with Jesus there. I will say probably like Houston's going to settle with Jalen Green out of the G League. I think he's probably going to be the number 2 guy out of that draft. And, look, if they're going to move on from John Wall, Jalen Green is a bright young man coming into the league. He dropped like 18 points per game in the G League. And he's got a ton of athleticism. I don't know if you guys have seen this dude, but man, this guy's got bunnies. And so, either way, when you go with Jalen Green, there's nothing wrong with that. And like Jesus said, I think Houston kind of knows already what they're gonna go for. As much as they're gonna try to gun for that number 1 pick, I just don't think Detroit's gonna let that go. It'd be kind of dumb. I think Cade Cunningham is the clear number 1 choice. So, if they do that's bold.
And I think also, going back to the John Wall point, the Houston Rockets have made Kevin Porter Jr. a point guard. This is a guy that was pretty much traded for like a bag of popcorn by the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, he's the only player. He dropped 50 points against the NBA champs Milwaukee Bucks. So, there's definitely a bright future there. So, imagine Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green in the backcourt. That's a scary backcourt.
Yeah, and I feel like the Houston first of all, we'll start with the Detroit Pistons. They, of course, have the number 1 pick, and I'm really surprised still that they got the number 1 pick because the Pistons are never lucky. And I think the Pistons will take Cade Cunningham, but the Rockets are an interesting team as well because, again, they have John Wall. I'm with you too, Jesus. I don't think he's going to be with the Rockets when the season begins, or I think he's going to get traded maybe in the deadline if he's still with them when the season begins. I could see maybe him going to the Lakers or something if they can't get Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook. But it's going to be interesting. I think I was hearing today on the radio that I think Bobby Marks from ESPN mentioned that it's kind of a top-heavy draft where there's the 4 best players and Cade Cunningham, Jalen Suggs, Evan Mobley, and then you got Jalen Green, as Alex mentioned. But it's going to be interesting after that. And, of course, I'm just intrigued to see what the Rockets do with that number 2 pick. And it would be very interesting to see what they do with that number 1 pick. But before we talk about the NBA Finals, do you think the Rockets will be able to make a move from number 2 to number 1? And if they do, what would they trade exactly?
It's interesting. For sure, they will have to give up the number 2 pick. I wouldn't be surprised if they also give up either the 23rd and 24th pick, one of those picks, and then probably add a player. I know Eric Gordon is still out there, that another player that the Rockets are trying to move. And look, Eric Gordon, once healthy, he's a solid NBA player. He can get you buckets. He's a solid defender, not great, but solid defender. So I don't think they'll move up. That's my prediction. I think the Pistons will probably want a big, large haul for the number 1 pick, and I don't think the Rockets were willing to give up that much. And one last point on John Wall. It's interesting you said that John Wall to the LA Lakers. I actually think he may go to the LA Clippers. I think John Wall with the Clippers will make good sense.
Yeah, as you mentioned, just the Clippers. I'm a huge Kawhi Leonard fan, so I would love to see them get a top point guard. I don't know. I got a feeling that, I mean, Reggie Jackson had a great year, and I think he's a free agent. I doubt the Clippers will bring him back. If they do, that wouldn't be a terrible option, but I would love for them to sign John Wall or even go for a Kyle Lowry maybe, because of course they already have Kawhi, they have Serge Ibaka. What do you think about that, Alex?
Yeah. I mean, I think the John Wall move to the Clippers would make a bit more sense, because I know Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan are, you know, of course we all know they're buzz, and I think they're trying to go to the Lakers. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. I don't know how that's going to go down. But I think a John Wall move to the Clippers makes a ton of sense if they're going to lose out on Reggie Jackson. Like you said, I don't think he comes back. So, you know, picking up John Wall would be fantastic.
Yeah, regardless, I think it's going to be a fun draft and a fun offseason, and definitely a lot of trades, since there's not a lot of good free agents outside of Kawhi Leonard. And, you know, there's a few others that I can't think of right now, but I just know there's going to be a lot of trades. Now that the NBA season is over, of course, the Bucks take down the Suns in 6 games. What did you guys think of the NBA Finals this year?
What did you think, Jesus? Because I know you got stuff to say.
I was trying to let you speak first, since I feel like I'm just jumping.
All right, fine.
Podcast.
I'll go for it. I love this year's finals. I thought it was lit. It was fantastic. Like, you know, everything about it was just enjoyable. I mean, all the storylines involved around it. I mean, obviously, you know, Giannis and his story. You got Chris Middleton, a G League guy who becomes a NBA champion. Drew Holiday, you know, a gritty player, kind of bouncing around from teams, and finally ends up with the Bucks, and it's sort of like that last piece they needed to get over the hump. And of course, you got the young Phoenix Suns with Devin Booker, you know, DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges stepped up, Cameron Payne basically like revived his whole career with Phoenix, and I would know that because when he was with the Bulls, that definitely wasn't the case. But overall, it was definitely a very like refreshing NBA Finals. It was a nice breath of fresh air to just see different teams instead of the usual, like, you know, Golden State Cleveland matchups that we always had. And I remember like the Heat and the Spurs when they had their big three. So yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, that's something that we kept saying throughout the playoffs, is how refreshing it was to see new blood, new players, which was the next wave that's going to carry this NBA, you know, on into the next, you know, 10, 15 years. So it definitely was good to see them. You know, we saw Devin Booker had his come out party in these playoffs, his first playoffs appearance. You know, Chris Paul making it to the NBA Finals. You know, it has to be said. I wonder how Chris Paul plays if he never catches COVID. You know, because I know that you know there's been some, you know, studies that for some people COVID has a long-term effect. So I wonder if Chris Paul never gets COVID, how does that affect? You know, maybe we're talking about a different NBA champion. But no, these NBA Finals were so great, so fun. I meant to look at the NBA ratings to compare it to past years, but I definitely know that many people watched because it was new teams, you know, and great storylines. And I mean, come on, Giannis, how can you not love his story? You know, he was selling shoes, selling, you know, trinkets on the, you know, when he was a young kid, and now he's here and an NBA champion. And I'm sure all of us saw that, you know, one video where Giannis, he's looking up at the rafters and he's telling his dad and mom, I want a rafter up there. I want my name up there. And I want to have a championship banner. And then he did it. You know, and it's just such a great story. Like, I'm just waiting for Disney to make a movie about him now.
Yeah, it's definitely a great story, and especially what he came with. And I think there's a story that they tell a lot, but it's still, I think it's a great story. It's you know, when after he was drafted by the Bucks, I think he all of his money at the time was going to his family over in Greece, and one time his whole paycheck went to his family over in Greece. Had no money enough for a cab. Started to walk or was running or something, didn't have a car, so basically walked to the stadium. Someone says, hey, you know, you're Giannis or whatever, and picks him up. I just think that, and it goes to the statement. I think that's a great story. And of course, the Bucks, when they originally drafted Giannis, they were just a mediocre team, maybe even below mediocre. They were just not good. They had a hard time.
Awful.
They were awful.
But I mean, not just them. I mean, the whole Bucks organization going down to their arena. I believe it was called Bradley Center. It was in shambles, really, and it was just that whole Milwaukee Bucks organization needed a whole change from top to bottom. And Giannis was that first piece. And now I'm not sure if I remember, but did they trade Brandon Jennings before or after Giannis?
Brandon Jennings,
to be honest,
he was sorry. I mean, he cut you off. He was drafted, I believe, before Giannis got drafted. I think it was in 2013 or something like that. And Chris Middleton was a part of that deal.
Yeah, so up to that point, Brandon Jennings was the most recognizable Buck, and they traded him for Chris Middleton. Well, I mean, not just Chris.
I mean, there was a package, but
it was a package. But now we know that Chris Middleton was the main piece that came back. But at that time, nobody knew. Chris Middleton was a 39-pick second rounder. I think he barely got playing time with the Pistons. Once again, the Pistons. So it's an organization that they rebuilt themselves the right way. And this is something that I mentioned on our podcast, the Basketball Fiends, that they did it the right way. They trusted their scouting department. They trusted their coaches. Now, speaking about the coach, I know earlier this season, one of our topics is Coach Bud on the hot seat, because there were all these rumors circulating that if the Bucks don't make a deep playoff run, Coach Bud was going to get fired. Clearly, now he said, right?
That man was out the door and he just slammed it shut. He's like, nope, I'm staying.
Yeah, and like you said, Mike Budenholzer was definitely on the hot seat before the season. I feel like if he would have lost the conference finals, he might have been out the door. But because there were so many years where there was 2 straight years where they were the top seed, lost to the Raptors, then lost to the Heat. And then, of course, as we all know, that before when the Bucks drafted Giannis, I think they had hard times selling out the seats. I don't think there was not many people watching the Bucks, and now it's like 60,000 people were in the Deer District, which is crazy. As we go to the Suns side now, it looks like Chris Paul he could be a free agent this year if he opts out, which is most likely going to happen. But do you think he'll return to the Suns? And if he does return to the Suns, where do you think he'll be next season?
I'll let Alex answer this first, because from the very beginning on our third episode, I think, or second episode, we had a hot take for the season. And my hot take was that the Brooklyn Nets will not make the NBA Finals. And I actually made that as a joke, because I thought that they would make the finals, but I just wanted to pick something, oh, wow, it's a hot take. But Alex's hot take, he said the Phoenix Suns will make a run to the Western Conference Finals. So he had been on this Phoenix Suns train from the very beginning. So, Alex, what do you think?
Oh, hell yeah. I hopped on the train right after that bubble run. I was like, this team, all they need is one guy, one vet. And once they got Chris Paul, I was like, man, that's exactly who they need. And you even look at what CP3 did with OKC. I think they were like a 5th seed in the bubble. And I think they went to 7 games. So, I mean,
with the Houston Rockets, I remember clearly.
I remember.
Blocked Lou Dort.
That's true, right? When he was with Houston as well. So, I mean, the Chris Paul effect is real. So, in regards to like if he comes back or not, I would say if he goes, it would make more sense for him to go to the Lakers, just because I think he has that I need to win a title right now. I mean, he's 36, which isn't old, but in basketball standards, I mean, he's getting to that point.
In basketball terms, that is pretty old, Alex. And I think that was the first immediate thought I had. As soon as the game was over, I said, Chris Paul's going to go to the LA Lakers. I mean, him and LeBron James are too friendly. We all remember them with the banana boat, with D-Wade. So, I mean, they're, really close friends. His family lives in LA. That was one of the reasons why he signed with the Phoenix Suns, to be close to his family. So my immediate thought as soon as the game was over was like, well, Chris Paul is going to the LA Lakers, and the Lakers will be the favorites to win the title. If I'm not mistaken, they are currently the favorites to win the title next season.
Any team with LeBron is always a favorite.
True that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the banana boat and LeBron and Chris Paul are friends. It also made it pretty obvious when LeBron went to the Suns and Bucks game in Game 5, which was very interesting because you normally don't see LeBron as a fan when he's not in the finals. So I just thought that was kind of weird, and that just seemed like, it's most likely LeBron's trying to convince him to sign. Do you think like a guy like Melo then? I don't know if he's a free agent this year, but I know he's currently in Portland. But do you think if he's available, do you think the Lakers would try to pick him up too, even though he's getting older?
Ooh,
I actually hadn't thought about that.
that is interesting. I think he would definitely be like coming off the bench because I mean probably like Kuzma would be gone at that point or something like that. I mean, especially with all the talk that's been going on with him, and I think too like the Lakers need help on the bench. They don't have as much depth as we thought. We all thought Dennis Schroeder was definitely going to be that guy to kind of pick up the slack with the Lakers, and that didn't happen. Montrezl Harrell underperformed. Marc Gasol, Andre Drummond, when he came in, obviously it was kind of late, but still, like a lot of those guys underperformed. So yeah, when you mentioned that, that's actually kind of an intriguing idea for sure.
No, but here's what I say is, if Carmelo would have, if he really wanted to play with LeBron and LeBron really wanted to play with them, they would have made it happen last season. You know, because I mean, I think he would have maybe. I mean, not. I guess taking a pay cut to go play with LeBron. I'm not sure how much he's getting paid with Portland, but I actually wouldn't be surprised. You know, maybe that might be my hot take for during the offseason.
Just steal JJ's idea.
Yeah, still JJ's idea.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what Portland does too. And speaking of Portland, it really looks like Dame Lillard is out the door. And of course, I know the Warriors are going to try to trade for him. I don't see how that's going to work with Steph Curry and stuff like that. But who do you guys think would be the best fit for Dame Lillard?
I threw this out on the podcast, and Alex shut it down so quick. I said, "What if Dame Lillard went to the Phoenix Suns?"
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Alex was not having
it. You'd be surprised of what team I picked would be actually a good fit for him.
What'd you pick?
Oh man, I switched up. Well, not that I switched up. Actually, I think the Knicks wouldn't be bad.
Ooh, I can see.
Yeah,
that.
there is a big. Yeah, it's New York's a big market, but I mean the Knicks do have money. I'm just not sure what would the Knicks give up. What like
that's true. Yeah, it would be.
I mean, you could.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. My bad. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I mean, they could maybe Mitchell Robertson, Kevin Knox. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of all their roster outside of Derrick Rose and Julius Randle.
Probably
I mean,
RJ Barrett, you would have to revolve a deal around
I forgot about him. Yeah,
but even then, it's like, does that make Portland better? You know, because I think Portland will at least want to stay somewhat competitive. And now here's what I'll flip it. Do you think Dame Lillard saw these finals and said, "Wow, a mid-market team won the NBA championship"? You know, does that now change the mindset of Dame Lillard? And now he's like, "Look, we just need to retool our roster. You know, maybe instead of trading Dame Lillard, they trade CJ McCollum, which I know he didn't have the greatest playoffs, but we know the type of player that CJ McCollum is. So I'm not quite sure. I actually don't think Dame Lillard gets traded. And if he does, maybe it'll be midseason, but I don't think it'll happen in the off season.
Yeah, I mean, before this season started, I thought Dame Lillard to Milwaukee made a lot of sense, but that was before the Jrue Holiday trade. And even after the Jrue Holiday trade, I'm like, that doesn't make much sense. But obviously now it's perfect because the Bucks won a championship. But I just thought Dame Lillard originally to Milwaukee made a lot of sense. But I mean, I just can't think of a team right now. I don't think the Warriors, the Lakers. I can't see the Blazers trying to trade Dame Lillard to the Lakers.
Because it definitely has to be a large haul. Because I think there's 4 years remaining on Dame Lillard's contract, and I think it was Brian Windhurst. He said if Dame Lillard gets traded, he anticipates it'll be a larger haul than James Harden. For the simple fact, not that he's saying that Dame Lillard is better, but he's saying for the simple fact that James Harden only had 2 years left on the contract. Dame Lillard has 4, so you're guaranteed to have at least Dame Lillard for 4 years. So that would get you a larger haul than what the Rockets got for James Harden.
Do you have anything? About maybe Dame Lillard possibly going to? Just what do you think, Alex?
I mean, I could maybe see Philly as, I guess, a team that might have enough for a haul in regards to Dame Lillard. Like obviously, like Ben Simmons is out the door, so it would probably be him and maybe I don't know Seth Curry,
maybe
something like that.
Maxey too, the young guard as well.
Thibault, I think is his name. Hopefully I said it right. So I can see Philly in that case as like a team that has enough for a Damian Lillard trade. But I would say I would agree with Jesus where I think Damian Lillard sticks around to try and see, hey, like we can retool, we can build up a squad that can compete for a championship. He's gonna see it through, but if it gets to the point where like Portland really isn't gonna go anywhere and isn't gonna win a championship, I think he's out.
I think Philly, sorry, JJ, but I think Philly makes so perfect sense. You know, Dame Lillard with Joe Embiid, I think that just makes so much sense because if the Portland Trailblazers, of course, they'll have to get Ben Simmons back, that still keeps them competitive in the West. Not championship potential, but look, we've seen in these playoffs, anything can happen. You know, one injury to one or the other team, and who knows, right? But I think Philly just makes too much sense for it to not happen. So I'll say now, I'm going to jump on with Alex and say Dame Lillard's going to be a 76er.
I forgot about the Sixers, to be honest with you. I mean, that was kind of the trade. I think after Philly lost to Atlanta, right?
Atlanta.
Yep.
After they lost, I think we kind of heard Dame Lillard to the Sixers and stuff like that. But I don't really know, to be honest with you. I can't really see. I mean, are the Blazers really that great if they trade Dame Lillard for Ben Simmons and probably a few other players? I just can't see it. And to be honest with you, I don't think Ben Simmons is a point guard. I think he should go to the 3 or 4 or maybe be like more of a point forward, kind of like what LeBron is. But the way he just can't shoot, so I don't really consider him a point guard. But at the end of the day, I mean, we'll see what happens with the Sixers. I mean, they're still a really good team with Joel Embiid, but I mean, it's gonna be wild to see what they do in the offseason. And again, thanks for coming on, guys. But did you think, or is there another player is there another free agent that I'm forgetting that you could see jumping to another team and kind of shocking all of us?
John Collins.
Ooh, John Collins, you're right. He is a
Collins.
Is he a free agent or is he a?
I think he's restricted.
Okay.
I think he's a restricted free agent, but that would sort of be like a little bold prediction I have for the offseason would be like John Collins ended up somewhere.
I think I know you said that you're a big Kawhi fan, JJ. And look, you know, there's been rumors floating around that perhaps Kawhi isn't as safe to return to the Clippers, which to me, I think that's just a lot of buzz. Because look, we all heard that he bought a super expensive house in LA. Granted, he could just sell it, right? But I don't see what team he will go to that gives him a better chance than the LA Clippers, especially how well they played after he left. I think Kawhi will stay with LA, but I think you hit it on the head, JJ. There's not many marquee players in this free agency, but there's a lot of mid-tier players that can make a difference. Bobby Portis, he's a free agent this season, and I know some teams are going to look at him and be like, I could use a player like Bobby Portis. I could use a dog on my team. Reggie Jackson from the LA Clippers. As much as Reggie Jackson would like to go back, I think some team is just going to throw crazy money at Reggie Jackson. I mean, you know, money talks, right? We all know that money talks. So it's. I don't think there's many marquee free agents, but there's a lot of good mid-tier free agents that can definitely help a team out.
Yeah, and I think, Alex, you first mentioned John Collins, and I kind of heard a lot of sources, John Collins to the Spurs. That would help San Antonio a lot, I think, if they could sign Collins. And then, of course, as you mentioned, Jesus, Kawhi Leonard, of course, he's a free agent this year. If he opts out, which he probably is going to, because he can make the supermax of the Clippers, which I think makes the most sense. But the Heat and Mavericks, I know, have been rumored are going to try to make a hard push at Kawhi. And Miami kind of makes sense because, you know, you have Jimmy Butler and Kawhi. They're great friends. And before Kawhi went to the Clippers, he wanted Jimmy Butler, and of course Butler signed with Miami, but the only concern about that is Kawhi is far from home, and he wants to be in LA. And if he's not going to go to the Warriors, I don't think, because it's not his team, and that's one of the reasons why he didn't go to the Lakers, because it wasn't his team, it was LeBron's team. So I think he's safe with the Clippers. Reggie Jackson, I could see him getting a massive payday, the way he played this postseason. And of course, you know, back to Kawhi, I think he's going to retain with the Clippers, because if Kawhi doesn't get hurt, I think the Clippers probably make the finals, because they took the Suns to 6 game with just Paul George. And I really think if Kawhi returns to the Clippers and he's healthy, the Clippers are, outside the Lakers, probably the second most team to win the finals. And of course, the Clippers with Kawhi are 4-1 or 4-2 versus the Lakers. So I could see them, and of course I would love to see a conference final between the Lakers and Clippers. We still haven't got it yet, but it would be fun to watch. But as we end the interview, and again, thanks for coming on, can you tell us more about your I know you mentioned your podcast a little bit, but can you tell us what you have in store for the future for the Basketball Fiends podcast?
Thank you for the Basketball Fiends. We're just next week we'll kind of wrap up our first season as hosting the Basketball Fiends podcast. And this first season was strictly audio. I think we made that conscious decision because like I mentioned earlier, me and Alex, we had never really talked. We didn't know each other, so
we didn't know we existed.
Yeah, I was like, if someone would tell me, "Hey, do you know Alex Aguilera?" I'd be like, "I have no idea who you're talking about." But so we used this kind of first season for us to kind of get used to talking to each other, get to know each other, what our tendencies are. So for the second season of the Basketball Fiends, we're gonna finally do video as well, which should be pretty interesting how that works, because I kind of like where it's just audio because you can do little edits here and there, some of these silences. So it's gonna be interesting. I know JJ, you do video, so hopefully you can give us some tips as to how we can do good video podcasts. But Alex, what can you say about the Basketball thing?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's. I'm so glad Jesus hopped on because I had nobody to co-host the podcast with. It was just like I was talking with the editor, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to do a basketball podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, I'd be down." He's like, "Okay, find someone," and I was like, "Okay, I mean, we'll see." And Jesus hopped on, and he's been a great co-host. So, I mean, definitely, I think in the offseason we'll definitely be talking about obviously rumors, NBA coaching changes, obviously the draft where we might get into a little bit. I know we got some stuff going on in our personal lives, just moving around. So, but yeah, it should be fun. Definitely going to be expanding a lot more come next season.
And we definitely want to have more hosts during this offseason. JJ would love to have you on to our podcast. We need guests. But this first season, we really took it, like I said, just more us to kind of get used to, because this is the first podcast either one of us has done, really. I know, both of us had been, guests, similar to how we're guests here now. But this is our actual first podcast. We're producing it, we're doing all the legwork, all the research and everything. So it's definitely been fun. But for the future, that's I guess the best thing is we're jumping on to video now.
All right, that is great. Again, go check out the Basketball Fiends podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You guys are also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or what are you guys all on for your social media?
You can find us on bballfiends_pod. For Instagram, Twitter, and I believe those are the two social medias we have, and that's it. And also follow our Esquina. They're our podcast. We're part of their podcast
network.
So it's resquina.com. You can also check out some great stories on there. I know we had a great story from our CEO with Danny Rojas, the Ted Lasso favorite. There's some good stories on there. So check us out, the Basketball Fiends podcast, and resquina.com.
All right, thanks for coming on. Don't forget to check out the Basketball Fiends podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Also check them out on Instagram and Twitter. Again, thanks for coming on, Jesus and Alex. It's been great. I enjoy talking about the NBA. And again, thanks for coming on, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you for even having us on. So thank you, JJ.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up the show with our segment Questions from Instagram, where I pick 3 fan sports questions from Instagram. Of course, don't forget to follow us at sports_podcast and check usually Wednesday or Friday, sometimes Thursday. Just basically check it almost every day if you're following us, and I'll have questions from Instagram. Just type any type of sports question, and most likely I will answer your question and give you a shout out on the most recent episode. This first question comes from @PizzaLover44. She asks, how many more years do you think Aaron Rodgers will play with the Packers, or just in total? Well, I think he plays 3 or 4 more years, but I think this is his final season in Green Bay. And yeah, I understand the NFC is not as deep as the AFC, but I don't think the Packers are better than the Buccaneers or the Rams. I think those are the 2 best teams of the NFC. The Packers do have a solid lineup. I think Aaron Rodgers was kind of acting childish during the whole thing, but I understand the Packers organization wasn't on the right side either, but I feel like both sides were wrong. But anyways, I do think this is his last season. I do think he'll play 2 or 3 more years. I don't know who he'll play with. I mean, maybe the Broncos or Raiders, but I think this is going to be his final season with the Packers. Again, thanks for the question @PizzaLover44. This next question comes from @JohnJohnson166, and he asks, do you have a World Series prediction yet? Well, if you remember a few weeks ago, Deji Andrews from the Baseball Connection podcast came on and said he thinks the Rays versus Giants in the World Series. I could see that, but recently the Astros have gotten really hot, and of course the Red Sox are good as well. So I'm going to stick with the Giants in the NL, but I'm going to go with the Red Sox in the American League. I think just to play it safe. But again, so my prediction right now is the it's the Red Sox versus the Giants. But again, it could be a lot of those teams, especially in the American League. That could be a very competitive race between the Rays, Red Sox, Astros, even the White Sox recently. So it's going to be fun. Again, thanks for the question at John Johnson. This next question comes from at Aaron Mosier, and he asked, do you think U.S. will win the gold medal in basketball? I really do, at Aaron Mosier. I believe they'll bounce back. Of course, they're now 2-1, and they're going to play pretty soon against Spain at the time of this recording. So I think they learned their lesson from losing to France. I think the team chemistry has gotten better. Again, they have one of the best basketball players in the world in Kevin Durant and Damian Lillard, clearly top 5. So, but they do have a lot of talent, but it seems like they've finally gotten the chemistry together. But I do believe they will win the gold medal. Again, thanks for the question at Aaron Mosier. And that wraps up questions from Instagram. Again, if you want to be part of questions from Instagram, just follow us on sports_podcast. And of course, type in any type of sports question where it says questions from Instagram, and most likely I will answer them and give you a shout out on the most recent episode. Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and much more. Also, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Sports Town Podcast. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the right.